ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. And since we recently had Ram Navami and we also had the glorious opening of the temple in Ayodhya, so we will discuss about Ram Leela today. Are we going to display this?
Yes, whatever you share, it will come back.
I'm sharing already.
Yeah, he can do.
So we will discuss primarily from the Kishkinda Kand of the Ramayana. Our topic broadly is going to be balancing justice and forgiveness. So when someone does something wrong, then how should we respond to it? So we could say there is a wrongdoing, that's the action. And then there is a response to that action. So that response can range over a spectrum. There could be forgiveness, there could be justice, and there could be revenge. Broadly, these are the three spectrums of responses. So now, revenge is something which is not healthy, not desirable. And we understand it intuitively, but we'll also discuss this more in detail. So, but among these two, forgiveness and justice, which one to choose when? And on what basis? That is what we will discuss. And we will discuss this primarily based on the story of Sugriv, Vali, and Ram. Now, in one sense, if we look at the story, Vali was given justice. And we'll see how it was justice. Vali was punished by Lord Ram, whereas Sugriv was forgiven. Later on, when Sugriv forgot his promise, so Lord Ram did not hold it against him. So when to forgive, when to seek justice, that is the subject that we will be discussing overall. Now before I start, I'd like to ask you some questions. So let's start with forgiveness. I'd like to know from your side, what are the positives? Why should we forgive? And then we'll also discuss the negatives. Are there any situations when we should not forgive? Are there any negatives of forgiving? Okay. Any problem? Okay. Is this better? Okay.
Angle you can, when you're writing down,
Okay.
then the audio is just fading out.
Oh, okay. Is this better now when I write down?
Yeah.
I kept it down, that's why. Thank you. So, I forgive your interruption because you are seeking justice for the audience. Okay. So what do you think about forgiveness and justice? What are the advantages of forgiving? Are there any disadvantages of forgiving? Any thoughts? Yes, we have a mic by any chance? Yes, you can speak. I'll repeat.
There are two things I can think of. One is there can be misunderstanding, and because of that misunderstanding, we should give benefit of doubt to that other person and forgive.
Okay.
That is one thing.
So if it is due to misunderstanding, so basically when we are talking about forgiveness, implied is the idea that there has been some wrong done. There has been some wrongdoing. But then if it is due to misunderstanding, then one way we give benefit of the doubt is by offering forgiveness. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Anyone else? Any of the Vaishnavis also would like to share? Please feel free. Yes, no.
Yeah, Prabhu. So in some cases, if we give the forgiveness and it was not supposed to be given, they think that, oh, you were weak because you couldn't do anything. That's the reason you are just forgiving me. So that's how people may think of
So forgiveness may be seen as a
weakness.
sign of weakness. Okay, that is true, unfortunately. But yes, anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One positive aspect I can think of with forgiveness is that it also gives you a peace, because something which is, suppose some wrongdoing has happened, whether it is a misunderstanding or something, and then it continuously goes in your mind, it also creates a disturbance in your life. Sometimes forgiving also gives you chance to move on and focus on something else.
Yes, it brings peace, and then that can help us to move on. Perfect, thank you. Yes.
Hare
Do we have another mic for the Matajis, or the same mic can be passed on? Yes, you can first speak. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I think it's in continuation with what Prabhu said. Like there's no burden on mind, and you don't hold any grudges against the person whom you have forgiven. So you sort of move on.
Okay. So basically, it enables us to let go of grudges.
Yeah.
And grudges can hugely burden the mind. Yes, thank you.
When you forgive, you put down your ego. Like you might have been right, but then by forgiving somebody, you let your ego go.
Okay, so forgiving, we are putting down the ego. That's true. That, okay, I was right, but I don't have to insist all the time that I'm right. Yeah, that's a deep point. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I was also thinking of Arjuna when he questions Krishna about the battlefield, not wanting to fight. He talks about being compassionate. So I was just thinking on those lines, being compassionate, and it's one of the qualities of the demigods also, and it is something it is nice to develop that quality of compassion within us.
Yes. So you could say that it's an expression of compassion, and it's not just expression, but also helps us to develop compassion. So when we act in a way of forgiving, we are developing the virtue of compassion. True. Thank you. It's interesting you quoted the example of Arjuna, because I was just in Stanford, and after I gave a class, after that one American person came to meet me. He said, I have read the Bhagavad Gita. He couldn't pronounce it very, Bhagavad Gita. He said, I like Arjuna. I don't like Krishna. He said, everything that Arjuna says in the first chapter, it all makes sense to me. After that, what Krishna says, Arjuna doesn't want to fight. Why does Krishna make him fight? I don't like Krishna. So it's interesting. Is Krishna an unforgiving God? When Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight, when Arjuna wants to exhibit compassion. So Krishna is certainly not unforgiving, but there are other factors to consider. And we'll discuss what those factors are. Forgiveness, the Gita does talk about forgiveness. As Shama is mentioned as a good noble virtue. It's pointed to and mentioned several places in the Gita. So no doubt about it. But we'll come back to that point. Thank you. Yes, Anandru. Did you have a comment?
I think it's already discussed. I was thinking forgiveness allows us to let go of resentment. So I think it's
Okay,
already
yes. So let go of grudges. You could also add resentment over there. So, true. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. It's an expression of tolerance.
It's an expression of tolerance, okay? You could say it refers to many virtues and related virtues, we could say. So, compassion is one, tolerance is another. Yes, true. Thank you.
So if we forgive others, then Krishna will also forgive us for our mistakes in the past.
Yes, that's the so forgive to be forgiven. We can say that, isn't it? So that's a very important principle. Thank you.
It can be the sign of strength also, because to forgive somebody means I should be able to control all my emotions and my anger on all that, everything I have in myself.
Yes, so forgiveness can be, although it can be seen as a sign of weakness, it requires strength to forgive. That's true.
The another thing I can think of, Prabhuji, is that if we are not forgiving, then probably we are feeding our sense gratification, right? So the concept of I versus the soul. I think if we are not forgiving, somehow we are trying to please our senses.
Yes, so you could say here that it increases material conceptions. That what you said. Put down the ego earlier. You said material conceptions are decreased by this. Thank you. So I think there is no one on the side of justice here. Very few. Yes.
I can add one more thing. It diffuses the situation. So if I forgive, I don't escalate the situation further.
Yes, true. So please move on. You could put it over here somewhat. Diffuses the situation. Related with that. Yes, true.
Just
Yes.
to balance the other side, Prabhu.
Okay.
It's so sometimes, like, if you forgive and you keep on forgiving, it may actually come to bite you later on, and it may not be in spiritual sense, but somebody you keep on forgiving, get at least at some point you might need to take some action. Otherwise, it might hurt you in the long run.
Yeah, so we can have like repeat exploitation or repeat abuse or repeat hurts, you can say. If we keep forgiving and the other person keeps hurting us,
Yes, Prabhu.
then it can be a serious problem. Yes. Yes, Prabhu.
It could be a sign of being broad-minded.
Forgiving can also be a sign of
Being broad-minded
Yes,
on let go. I mean, because you are also, as a human, you are bound to err, right? So if you
Yes,
forgive, you can be kind of.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. We are broad-minded when we forgive. Yes, Mataji. We'll have here and behind two Mataji, then we can stop at
Hare
that.
Krishna
Yes.
Prabhu. Forgiveness is also a sign of humility, because one is able to forgive only if that person is humble. And you can only be humble if you understand that whatever is happening to you, it is your karma, and you must have done something that you're getting this whatever's happened to you. So yeah, humility.
Okay, humility. You can say, if you understand it's my own karma, then I can accept what is happening to me. Thank you. Yes, true.
Forgiveness, again, sometimes it depends on the situation. For example, when in Ramayana, Lakshman did not forgive Shurpanakha when she was trying to kind of harm Sita Devi. So in that situation, based on, I think forgiveness also depends on the situation and whether dharma is being followed or not. So when dharma is not being followed, then forgiveness should not be considered.
Okay.
So I don't know whether it falls in the negative or...
Okay, you could put it this way that sometimes if forgiving, it's almost paradoxical. You are going to an important point here that forgiving can be a dharma, but sometimes forgiving can lead to further adharma. It sort of paves the way to adharma. The same person can keep doing the same thing again and again and again. So then forgiveness can be a problem. So, okay. Can you forgive me? We'll move on. Thank you. We'll discuss more tomorrow also, but I'll take about 2-3 broad points before we dive into the pastime. See, let's talk about, I'll talk about forgiveness and wrongdoing first as an introduction, and then we'll move forward from there. See, forgiveness, there are two distinct things over here. The Gita very much talks about forgiveness as an individual virtue. In our individual interactions, we all, as you said, we commit mistakes, so forgive so that we will be forgiven. So definitely here it is recommended. But at the same time, the Gita tells Arjuna that you are not just acting as an individual. You are a Kshatriya. You are a martial guardian of society. So you are acting as a representative of the state. Not just a representative of the state, a leader of the state, you could say. So forgiveness cannot be a state policy. No matter what crime you commit, you're forgiven for that. So if forgiveness becomes a state policy, then that state will go into anarchy. It will go into chaos. So when we are responsible for any entity, or we are responsible for some broader group, at that time we have to consider the implications of that action for everyone. So it cannot be a state policy. Why not? I'll talk about that as a reason. See, generally, when there is, so the opposite of forgiving, generally we don't think of it as justice. What do you think of the opposite of forgiving? Sorry? Okay, that's the, yeah, revenge can be there, but it's more of forgiving or punishing. So now, in the Mahabharata, when there's a discussion between Yudhishthir Maharaj and Bhishma Pitamaha in the Shanti Parva and Anushasan Parva, there's an elaborate discussion of Raja Dharma, the duty of a king. And there the broad principle that is discussed is that that when a king should punish, when a king, or why does a king sometimes need to punish? Basically, Bhishma is also trying to console Yudhishthir. That Yudhishthir feels that I have just fought this terrible war, and it was because of me all this death happened. So at that time he's consoling him. And he basically says that this is not stated in the explicit verse, but multiple places the verses come about, so we can draw an inference that broadly when there is punishment, now there are multiple stakeholders when a wrongdoing is done, when a wrong has happened. So the first is, you could say, the victim. Then there is the victimizer. But then there is society at large. So these three are the broad stakeholders. Why society at large? Say, if somebody robs a person's house. So there's a robber and there's a person who's been robbed. And there's the society at large. Now the society can be, in one sense, it can be victims or it can be victimizers. Isn't it? That means tomorrow other people from society may be robbed, or tomorrow other people from society may become robbers. So broadly, when, say, when a wrongdoing is to be punished, at that time, these three stakeholders have to be considered. And accordingly, there are things to be done. So for the victim, there has to be some kind of reparation. Reparation means compensation. Nowadays in American politics, there is the thought that there was so much discrimination against the blacks, so maybe there should be some reparation for the blacks. So reparation is some kind of compensation. So if somebody has stolen from somebody, then at the very least, you should give back what has been stolen. So the victim, there has to be some reparation. Now, along with that, for the society, there has to be some regulation. That means that society law and order should be maintained. So on one side, other people should not become victims, and also other side, that we won't want other people to become victimizers. So if one robber gets away by doing things, other people think, well, he robbed and got away, she robbed and got away, I can also do that. So that way, there will be chaos in society. So that's why the one principle in justice is that justice should not just be done, justice should be seen to be done. The idea is, regulation means, you could say, society should not become wrongdoers, especially in this trajectory. Society should not go. Because one person does wrong, gets away. Now the third is, for the victim, there has to be at least some restriction. That the victim, sorry, not the victim, the victimizer. The victimizer should not be doing the same thing again. And not only that, sometimes there has to be some retribution. So retribution means, okay, you did this, you hurt someone, you have to be hurt for that. So now, retribution can sometimes be revenge, but it does not have to be revenge. You have hurt someone, you have to pay your debt to society. You have to pay for your crimes or wrongdoings. So this is a broad picture that there are multiple stakeholders. So from one perspective, you could say forgiveness, it actually is primarily involves these two people. So forgiveness might mean that, okay, the victim may say that, I don't want any retribution, let this person go. And the victim may say that, okay, as long as, so if somebody has stolen money from them, as long as they return the money, I'm not going to press any charges. But sometimes, in some cases, reparation may not be possible also. So there are sometimes reputational damage. Then how do you do reparation for that? It's not very easy. But the point is that if it is only a transaction between two individuals, then forgiveness is often desirable. But if it is something which involves a broader society, then forgiveness cannot be so indiscriminately done. Forgiveness cannot be said to be always a good. And Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, you fight, but fight not for revenge. Fight for seeking justice. And how do we know that Krishna is actually seeking justice? That will come to a little later, but it's a quick mention over here. That if you see in the chapter 11 in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 33rd verse, Krishna says, Mayai vaite nihata purvameva, that tasmat tamuttishta yasho labhasva jitva shatrun bhungshu rajyam samruddham. Your enemies, fight over them, win over them. By arrangement, they have been killed. So Krishna is using the language of enemies. But in the same chapter, last verse, Krishna uses the word nirvairaha. Have no enmity towards anyone. So he uses the word shatru over here. But then he uses the word nirvairaha. So what is going on here? Did Krishna forget what he spoke just now? A few verses earlier? No, not really. What Krishna is saying is, yes, these people are acting as enemies right now. They are acting as your enemies. You have to stop them. But don't make it a vengeance quest. Don't be vengeful. Have no personal enmity towards anyone. Focus on the idea is that they are wrongdoers, and for the good of the state, for establishing dharma, they need to be punished. So these are the broad stakeholders in wrongdoing. And now, with this understanding, I'll introduce various concepts in each of the session. So today we'll talk about why sometimes, the theme we discuss is why forgiveness sometimes may not be enough. They say, if somebody robs and they're forgiven, as I said, other people can keep robbing and things can become a norm. So in tomorrow's session, we will, not stopping now, but what I'm planning to do is we'll introduce one concept in each session in this broad discussion, and then we will analyze those concepts. So while we are going through the narrative also of this broad story. So today, now let's begin the story. with how things happen. So, while the Ramayana describes the story in a particular way, that first we have Ram meeting Sugriv, and then Sugriv then telling the backstory of what happened to him. But so the Ramayana has a particular sequence of narrating the story, but we will go along chronologically. And then we will come to how things work out. So Vali and Sugriv were brothers and friends. They were brothers, friends, and you could say colleagues. They're working together. Vali was the king of the Vanara kingdom, and Sugriv was the commander. And both of them together were so powerful that even the demons, including Ravana, did not dare to mess with them. So, although Kishkind was not very far away from the area where the demons were living, in fact, if we look from a geographical perspective, Janasthan is above Kishkind. So the demons had their domain below in Lanka. The demons had created an outpost in Janasthan. But when Ravan and Vali had faced off, Ravan had realized that I cannot defeat Vali. And then they had something like a mutual no aggression pact. So Vali had allowed the demons to have an outpost. But an outpost means it's not in your kingdom, it's somewhere outside. So that was in Janasthan. And they were so powerful that the demons also didn't dare mess with them. But the demons are not a homogeneous species. There was not all the demons accepted Ravan as their lord. There are demons who were living in different places also. So there was such a what among terrorists, there are some terrorists who attack in groups, and some terrorists who act alone. So they are called as lone wolf terrorists. They attack alone. So there was such a lone wolf demon. He thought that if I can defeat Vali, then my fame will spread across the world. He said, let me try to attack Vali. Who was this demon? Anyone knows the name? Mayavi. So Mayavi was this demon who came and challenged Vali outside his kingdom. So he had been terrorizing the denizens in the vicinity. And when Vali heard that challenge, he came out of his palace, marching out. And just to be sure that this demon was not up to any tricks, that he didn't have any other demons assisting him. So at that time, Sugriv also came behind him. Now, Mayavi, although he was arrogant, he was not foolish. When he saw Vali walking forward, he realized Vali is really powerful. Somebody is a trained warrior, somebody is trained at martial arts. Then, if they have to fight against someone, they are sizing up the opponent. And just by the way a person walks, the way a person looks, they can understand how powerful this is. He says, Vali is not going to be easy to fight with. And they saw Vali is with Sugriv. He became alarmed. And he said, maybe I have bitten off more than what I can chew. And he started running away. Now, whether that running away was actually because he was scared, or whether that was a way to allure Vali into some trap. Now, Vali and Sugriv, especially Sugriv, was not very sure. Now, among Vali and Sugriv, Vali was more powerful. Sugriv was often more cautious. So Sugriv tailed along with Vali. And this demon Mayavi tried to shake them off, going here, going there. But when he couldn't shake them off, then he saw a cave and he disappeared into the cave. Now, going into a cave could seem stupid, because they could find him inside the cave and beat him to death. He would have no place to escape. But this was not just a cave. It was a cave that led to something like a catacomb, a chain of caves, and which is dark. And Vali also knew that this is long and deep. So Vali told Sugriv, we have to stop this demon. So you stand guard at the door. And I will go inside. And when I go inside, I'll find the demon and I'll kill him. If somehow there's some other way by which he escapes, then you can be there to stop him. So Sugriva says, let's stay together. What if he has some other demons assisting him? And they're all waiting for you. Now Vali said, no, I'll deal with them. We don't want him to escape. Because Vali was the elder among the two, Sugriva agreed reluctantly. And Vali went inside. And now, generally speaking, for somebody who is a warrior, sometimes the most difficult thing to do is to not fight. Like, if somebody is a cricketer, and a very important cricket match is going on, and they are told to sit on the benches. They are substitute. When can I go inside? At least in the cricket match, if you're not in the team, you're not in the team. So in other games like baseball or volleyball, football, sometimes one player can be swapped inside, outside. So now in IPL, they're trying to do that also. But the thing is that to sit outside is very difficult. So like that, Sugriva was sitting. And at least if a match is going on, you can see who is winning, who is losing. But here when Sugriva was waiting, he had no idea what's happening. And he was waiting and waiting and waiting. And then, finally, he heard the scream of the demon. And then after that, there was complete silence. And now, Sugriva started thinking, what happened? Now, he knew his brother. Normally, if Vali would win, Vali would roar in celebration. In fact, his exultation on winning was what he was known for. And Sugriva was thinking, there's no sound coming from Vali. We see in this Ramayana, this theme comes up, that how there is a sound and we draw an inference from that sound. So sometimes we draw inference from sound, sometimes we draw inference from silence. So with respect to later on, when Sita is abducted, see first there is a scream in the voice of Ram. Lakshman, Sita. And after that there's complete silence. Sita is overwhelmed by anxiety, not just by the first call, but by the absence of sound thereafter. Because the first call indicates that there is danger, but the absence of any sound thereafter indicates that what has happened? Has he fallen unconscious? Has he perished? So like that, similarly for Sugriva, here the absence of any sound thereafter, it unnerved him. He was waiting and waiting, and then he saw some blood trickling out from the cave. So I thinking, what's happening? He started fearing that maybe Vali has somehow been killed. And now if that had happened, if Vali is dead, then that means this demon must be far more powerful than what they had thought. If he had got the better of Vali, the chances that Sugriva could get the better of that demon were very slim. And if he was also killed by that demon, then their entire kingdom would be exposed, unprotected. And he might wreak havoc and devastate the entire kingdom. Sugriva decided, I have to do something. So he thought that the arena of victory, the victory arena of the demon, could be made into his tomb. How? Just block the entrance. So he looked around, saw a huge boulder. So this particular cave was a bit underground, at least in the entrance. And so he pushed with great effort. that boulder, and that boulder completely closed the entrance of the cave. Now, when this entrance was closed, at that time, he left from there. And we came back to the kingdom, and with a heavy heart, he told the citizens, the courtiers first, and then the citizens, what had happened. That Vali had perished. The whole kingdom was shocked. It sank into grief. There was a statewide period of mourning that was declared. And then the courtiers told Sugriv that every kingdom needs a king. Vali's son is too young to become the king now. You have to take that responsibility. With a heavy heart, Sugriv agreed as a service to his brother and to the kingdom that he had built. After some time, while Sugriv was on the throne, suddenly they all heard some thunderous footsteps and some fearsome roars. And as they were waiting, watching, Sugriv thought that he recognized the sound of the roars. Could it be true? His heart was filled with anticipation, elation at the possibility. And these roars were the roars of Vali, and Vali was alive. And then suddenly Vali burst into the court, and his eyes were bloodshot red. His whole form was disheveled. And Sugriv's heart became filled with joy to see his brother alive. But to his dismay, he saw in his brother's eyes no joy, but rage, even utter, almost hatred. Now Vali had killed the demon, but it had been a long chase. And because it had been a long chase, finally when he had killed the demon had become exhausted. And just prior to this, when Vali had killed another demon, he had, I think that was Dundubi. He had, was it Dundubi? The demon he had killed. And he had become so delighted. Some people, when they say they win a match, they just jump up and down and celebrate. So like that, he had celebrated so much that he had taken the dead body of that demon and flung it around and hurled it away as if to express his celebration. Now what had happened was that body had gone and fallen in the vicinity of the hermitage of Matanga Rishi. And that Rishi had been performing some sacrifices. And while the body had fallen, not in the sacrificial arena, but while the body had been flowing away, some of the blood from that had fallen to sacrificial arena. And Matanga Rishi had got enraged, and he said, "No, who desecrated my sacrifice like this?" And when he discerned that it was Vali, he said that foolish person who is so intoxicated with his power that he has lost his discernment, if he again comes here, if he does anything that will desecrate my sacrifice again, if he comes here by his presence, desecrates this place, he will fall dead. So basically, because of this incident, Vali also had toned down his celebration, and he was also exhausted. So he had not spoken anything. He had not uttered any sound after winning. And when he came back, he saw that the doorway was blocked. And he called out to Sugriv. There was absolutely no response. He started thinking, what happened? Had some other demon come and killed Sugriv? He tried to push and push. It's extremely difficult. He had already exhausted himself fighting against this demon. First chasing the demon, then fighting against the demon. And now coming back, he had very little energy left. Somehow after a long time with Herculean effort and great ingenuity, it somehow managed to push the boulder aside. And as soon as he saw, he looked around. There was no sign of Sugriv. There was no sign of any scuffle over there, which might have indicated that Sugriv had been attacked and had been killed or had even fled. So his suspicion started increasing. He looked back at the boulder and he said that this boulder is so large that it couldn't have just come naturally and fallen right to cover the cave. This is done by some person. This is not a natural event. Who could it be? Could it be Sugriv? Might his brother have betrayed him? Now that thought he couldn't bear, and as he came in, and when he charged back to the kingdom, and when he saw Sugriv sitting on the throne, his rage knew no bounds. Now when somebody does something wrong, it hurts us. But now, there are wrongs which are also of different degrees. Wrong, you could say all wrongs hurt us. Any wrong done to anyone, it hurts us. But among wrongs, the worst among the wrongs are the betrayals. It like say some thief comes and says a thief robs our house. Okay, that's bad. We feel hurt. But if some person, some friend or some relative whom we invite into our home, and we trust that person, and that person robs us, now it hurts even more. So, and it's one thing that our robbing, okay, you may rob some money. But in this case, it is almost like for Wali, everything that was mine was taken by him. It's one thing to take some money, but it's like, say, sometimes in corporate boardroom there are battles and there are politics and there's backstabbing. And say somebody is a subordinate, that person has the boss overthrown, betrays the boss, and then takes the post of the boss. So among various wrongs, this where somebody whom we trust, that person betrays us and takes away everything from us. That is unbearably painful. So now Wali's anger was so great. He just charged towards Sugriv and started pounding him. Now Sugriv, when he saw how angry Wali was, he tried to explain, he tried to clarify, but Wali was in no mood to hear. And he decided that better let me flee. He said, I'll wait for Wali's anger to cool down. And then I'll talk with him. Then I'll clarify. So he ran away. But when he ran away, for Wali, that was a further confirmation. If he had not been wrong, why would he have run away? Why would he have run away? And then after that, Wali, he became extremely angry with Sugriv. Now the courtiers tried to clarify and tell him, and this is what had happened. It was a misunderstanding. Now Wali said, it is not that I have misunderstood, it is you who have been misled. Sugriv planned to kill me and he told a story. And all of you are supposed to be on my side, but you are believing his story. So what happens is, once a person is betrayed, then their tendency to trust anyone goes down. So when others, Wali's own wife Tara told him, I don't think Sugriv is guilty. He says, you are just naive. Just didn't listen to anyone at all. Now Sugriv, he was waiting. there will be some opportunity by which I can clarify to Wali. But Wali's anger was just too much. See, normally, whenever there is when somebody is angry with us, we say, let some time go. After time, the passage of time, anger becomes cool. But that is not the only trajectory that happens. With the passage of time, anger may not become cool, it may become cold. Now, what is the difference between cool and cold? When it cools down, the person becomes introspective. What exactly happened? What did I do? A person becomes introspectively thoughtful. See, basically, anger is an emotion that is very expensive. Expensive physiologically, psychologically. Nobody can be angry for a very long time. Our body and mind just can't sustain it. So, anger has to go down. When it cools down, the person starts thinking, okay, what exactly happened? Let me try to find out. Let me get a better picture. Did I do anything to trigger this? It becomes introspective. But when anger becomes cold, a person becomes hatefully thoughtful. Thoughtful means that person is thinking, but is filled with such hate that person becomes calculative. That calculative means, okay, this person's hurt me, I have to get back. I have to get back at this person. And how will I get back? I have to do something or the other to get back at this person. So, basically it's like, say, if our hand is fractured. Now, if the hand is fractured, the first thing the doctor will tell us, don't move the hand. They'll put it in a sling or they may put it in a cast also. And now, if some child gets a fracture, then just to make the child feel good about the cast, people come and sign on the cast or draw some things. The idea is that, this cast is not a terrible thing, just don't try to remove it prematurely. So it is true, if there is a fracture, then keep the hand motionless. However, after some time, the hand has to be moved. If the hand is not moved, if the hand is kept in a sling for too long, then instead of recovering, the hand will start atrophying. So similarly, when there is anger and it is allowed to go on for too long, then it doesn't cool down, it becomes cold. So, with respect to Wali, what do you think happened with his anger towards Sugriv? Did it become cool or cold? Yes, it became completely cold. And then he decided that I have to punish him somehow or the other. He betrayed me. And then he decided that the only way to punish him, he tried to kill me, he may try to do that again. And before he can kill me again, I will kill him. And then he came out of the kingdom and started chasing Sugriv to try to kill him. So, what happened thereafter? What happened thereafter? We will discuss in tomorrow's session. Tomorrow we will discuss about, we will try to go forward and see how Ram dealt with Wali, if we get to that point. But tomorrow we'll discuss about how when a person does wrongs, there can be different kinds of wrongs. And those, depending on the kind of wrong it is, it has to be decided whether forgiveness has to be sought or justice has to be done. So, but here, let's summarize what we discussed today. We discussed mainly 3 points today. One was about forgiveness, justice, perspectives, that many of you contributed some things. And then we discussed about how when there is a wrong, there are 3 stakeholders. Which are the 3 stakeholders? Anyone remembers? victim, victimizer, and society. So all three need to be dealt with. For society, what needs to be done? Regulation. So everybody should not start doing wrong. For the victim, reparation. Some kind of indication that what has been done wrong, that is corrected. And for the victimizer? Sorry? Okay. So there's restriction or restitution. I did not talk about one thing, which we will talk about later. But the purpose of this is hopefully is rectification. That through restricting that person, the best result that can have is that a wrongdoer not only stops doing wrong, but also becomes a good person. That is the optimal result. So if forgiveness we discussed, at an individual level, it's a virtue. But at a social level, it has to be, at a state level, it has to be considered. It need not be a virtue. Individual virtue, but not a state policy. That is the main discussion. Then, in the case of this Vali Sugriv pastime, we discussed how misunderstandings arise. I didn't explicitly state that, but it was understood. Misunderstandings arise means basically what happened was, there was some observation, and from which some inference was made. So, both Vali and Sugriv did the same thing. Sugriv made an observation that there's the sound of the demon but no sound of my brother. And he made an inference that, oh, Vali is dead. And Vali saw that Sugriv is on the throne and the boulder has been closed, and he made an inference that, oh, Sugriv is a betrayer. So both Vali, Sugriv, they erred over here. They made mistakes in their inference. And how that led to those who were friends becoming enemies. And then lastly, we discussed about anger. With time, it can become cool, but it can also become cold. We want to prevent anger from becoming cold. Why it becomes cold, how to prevent that. We'll also discuss that in a future session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Is there any question or comment? Yes, please.
So when Sugriv thought that Vali was dead, could, instead of making an inference and just going and closing up the cave, couldn't he have just went inside and prevent the whole thing from happening and check if Vali was actually dead?
Well, the danger was if he went inside, demon could have killed him. If Vali had been alive, from his past actions, Vali was not a person to remain silent. So the inference basically for him was that, Sugriv for the inference for Sugriv was that Vali was dead. So that there is this, after something happens, there are always these what if scenarios. Like after a cricket match, if a favorite team loses, only if this person had been given the last over instead of that person. Only if this fielder had been here, only if this had been done, this had been done. So, yes, what is that saying, that hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? After the event, we can all say that this should have been done, not that have been done. But in this situation, he made a judgment call. Was that the best call? Well, we can say at least it is understandable why he did what he did. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, how do we decide when it is the right time to forgive or correct? State-wise, it's not good to forgive, but if you are in a position of responsibility or leadership, sometimes you can't just forgive. So how do we make that judgment call as devotees?
Okay, that largely depends on what is the nature of the wrongdoing. Especially if something is done repeatedly, That's one indication that, see, the point is not just forgiving or seeking justice. The point is like maintaining overall order, keeping the individual in order, keeping the order in society. So, in general, forgiving and letting go is a good strategy. The same thing is happening again and again. Then we may have to think, is forgiving enough? That's when it has to be evaluated. But that is in fact the topic we are going to discuss tomorrow, about when to forgive. So that depends on what is the nature of the wrongdoing. Okay. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, very nice elaboration of the the wrongdoing and that leading to forgiveness and justice kind of a thing. So, Prabhu, when somebody does wrongdoing, right, it can be unintentional or can be situational, right? That kind of naturally leads to kind of forgiveness but something are very intentional, or basically like somebody wants to rob you or kill you or whatever, right? I mean to say, where there is an intention, there is already pre-planning happens actually. Sometimes situation like between Vali and Sugriv, right? Sugriv didn't have any kind of like intention or he was not the situation was not clarity for him. So is it not like when it is always unintentional or situational, it leads to forgiveness, and it is always pre-planned, then it's always justice should be served kind of a situation? Because why I was saying this, because when you said like forgiveness is only possible if it is transactional between two people and not kind of impacting the society.
No, so forgiveness is desirable. I'm not saying it's only possible. Sometimes the state gives pardon. That's also there. And the point is, you cannot have the state as a default policy. And yes, as far as forgiveness being intentional and or for forgiveness cannot be given for something intentional, that's definitely true. In fact, that's what tomorrow we'll be elaborating on. I think all the questions are such that it's almost like what we are going to discuss tomorrow. I was trying to leave it for tomorrow. We will be definitely discussing that tomorrow. Are there any other questions? Generally, one of the ways to, I don't like it that all the questions that you're asking, I'm saying I'll answer them tomorrow. But it's an elaborate subject. If all the questions are the same vein, then I'll talk about something which I was going to talk tomorrow also. Now, but let's go ahead. Yes, please, Mataji.
Prabhu, so here we see a lot of misunderstandings, right?
Yes.
Like the truth is one. So truth is Krishna only knows what is the truth.
Yes.
But in any relationship, any friendship, there is based on our own perception. We perceive something. But that may not be the truth. So how do we see only the truth? What is the other person's intention, not our own perception?
Yes, that's a very important point. Well, I can answer that question today. So basically, see, whenever somebody does some hurtful action is done towards us, so naturally, the question comes up, why did this person do it? So broadly, there can be 3 explanations. This is what we should learn if we go to IIM. You can learn without going to an IIM also. So basically, one is ignorance. That person just didn't know. So sometimes people do certain things, they put something over here, they do something like that, which should not be done. Like somebody gives a particular medicine because they have cough, but that has side effects or whatever. If you consider medical perspective, somebody is ignorant. So ignorance may lead to something hurtful. Then the second could be incompetence. Now incompetence means that person made a poor judgment. And the third is malevolence. Malevolence means that person actually wanted to hurt the other person. So let's put it this way. This is sometimes ignorance is the problem is that just the action happened. Here it's at the level of judgment. The person made a bad judgment. But here it's at the level of motivation. So in general, in the beginning, one of you mentioned about the benefit of the doubt. So where ignorance or incompetence can suffice as an explanation, we should not go towards malevolence. That means that if somebody does something which hurt me, so if we quickly jump toward the conclusion that you did this because you wanted to hurt me, so then that person feels hurt by that also. So we can't know people's motivations. And in general, this is where our emotions sometimes distort our evaluation. Basically, if we like someone, we'll say, oh, maybe that person didn't know. Maybe that person was distracted. Something like that. And someone we don't like, what happens is, hey, this person, deliberately they must have done it like that. So our emotions often affect our evaluations, but in general, what we can try to do is, see, this is how biases come in. That if we are biased, then even a suspicion of a wrong action by a person from a particular group whom we are biased against, oh, all these people like this person must be a wrongdoer. But in general, it's a good policy to have that. Try to look for the least negative motivation for a person's action. And if the evidence indicates that the least negative motivation doesn't work, then go towards the more negative motivation. So that way, in general, as you said, there are misunderstandings. So with respect to Sugriv, he made a call of judgment. And the judgment turned out to be wrong. Vali had not been killed. Now, Vali also made a judgment. That, this particular stone boulder could not have come on its own. So, who placed it there? Sugriv placed it there. Now, why did he place it there? It was, he wanted to overthrow my kingdom. He wanted to overthrow me from my kingdom. So, what happened was, while both of them made mistakes in their judgment, but Vali went down to the motivation. He assumed what was the motivation. And that's where it becomes a problem. So, generally, when we start ascribing dark motivations to someone's actions, then that itself creates a big chasm in the relationship, a big barrier in the relationship. So when Sita, during the series of incidents that led to the abduction of Sita, when that demon Marichi, he called out in the voice of Ram, Lakshman, Sita. At that time, Sita was filled with anxiety. No. See, what had happened was that already Sita had, she had told Ram, can you get this deer for me? And Lakshman had said, this doesn't look like a real deer. It's a fake deer. It's a demon impersonating as a deer. And now Sita had said, you are too suspicious. But what she had thought, Ram will just go and catch the deer. Ram had gone and gone and gone for a long time. And a part of her started becoming worried. And okay, how much trouble is this going to cause? Like say, we tell someone, can you go and buy this? I need it. And we hear there's a storm forecast. It's close by available, you just go and buy it. It'll come back. But then, that person doesn't come back and we know the storm has hit that part of the city. Then we become worried. See, there's fear for the well-being of the other person, but along with the fear, there's a little bit of a guilt. And I caused that person to go over there. And then, when she heard that sound coming, Lakshman, Sita, She told Lakshman, please go. And Lakshman said, he tried to calm Sita down. He said, don't. He says, don't worry. That is not Ram. I know Ram is too powerful. He cannot be hurt, endangered by any demon. This is the demon impersonating in his voice. Now, Lakshman's aim was to reassure Sita. But the mind often works in peculiar ways. Is when something has happened and we are disturbed by what has happened and we tell it to someone. And if that person is not disturbed, then we become disturbed because they are not disturbed. Isn't it? So she became more disturbed and she said, please go. He says, no, Ram has told me to be here. I need to be here with you. I need to protect you. He says, no, Ram is in danger. You go. Nothing is going to happen to me. So she said, no, I cannot go from here. Now this is Sita became so frantic with anxiety that in her anxiety she started thinking, she started figuring out, why is Lakshman not going? And then that is where, so here both of them had a disagreement over judgment. She said that sound indicates that Ram is in danger. He said, no, that is fake. Ram is not in danger. So there's a disagreement over judgment. But then at that time Sita said, I know why you don't want to go. Because you have always had an evil eye on me. You want me for yourself. And if Ram dies, then you will fulfill your dark desires. Now, Lakshman was aghast to hear these words. He had never even contemplated such a thing. So, Sita, you do not know what you are saying. And he said, you will never have me. You know, I would rather die than be touched by you. And she just went on and on. And Lakshman couldn't bear it at that time. And he said, I cannot be here. I am going to leave now. So basically what happened over here was that Sita went down to intention. Now, of course, it was circumstantial. And even Lakshman understood later that it was circumstantial. It was hurtful, but circumstantial. So that's why later on when Lakshman and Ram met, Ram said that, why have you abandoned Sita? He said, no, this is what she spoke. Lakshman was already feeling very hurt. And Ram said, she must have been in anxiety. Why do you take her words so seriously? She spoke out of emotion. And they ran back. Now when they ran back and they came back and Sita was no longer there. Now Lakshman didn't think at that time, serves her right. She spoke like that to me, she deserves to be punished. Or even when finally they were reunited, Lakshman didn't say, when are you going to apologize? An apology is pending for a long time. Not like that. So the idea is, when there's a mistake in judgment, or rather when there's a disagreement about judgment, no, let it stay at the level of disagreement. Basically, this is at the level of intelligence. Two people assess differently. But malevolence means we go at the level of the heart. Okay, I saw the situation, you saw the situation, and I decided one thing, you decided another thing. They're two different things. But when those disagreements go to the level of the heart, then it becomes a serious problem. Or we take it to the level of the heart. You are ill-motivated. That's when it becomes a problem. So, in my previous book in the Ramayana, I mentioned that, don't see intention in words spoken in tension. So, we all, under the pressure of tension, may speak certain words, but don't see intention in those words. That's what Lakshman did. Okay. Does that address your question? Okay. Any last question before we stop? Yes, Manand Prabhu, Rajaram Prabhu, do we have some water by any chance?
So in continuation to what you just explained, I'm wondering, are there any examples where it is reasonable to actually conclude that the hurtful action is because of malevolence? Can't one always find some way of explaining away that by either incompetence or just ignorance?
Well, yes, it's somebody wants to explain it away, it can always be done, but sometimes it just becomes very clear. See, for example, like I was telling you earlier, the incident of when Krishna came as the peace messenger to Duryodhan. And at that time, we're talking about that concept. So Duryodhan completely rejected the peace proposal. So at that time, see, there are different ways of saying no also. So we invite somebody for a program at our place and they say, I'm sorry, I can't come, I have this to do. Now quite often, they don't want to come, so they are making an excuse. Now they are making an excuse, we know they are making an excuse, and they know that we know that they are making an excuse. But still, at least they are trying to make an excuse. But suppose they say, even if I die, my dead body will never come to your program. Then that is not just a no to the, not just a refusal to the request, that is a kick in the, not just a refusal to the invitation, it's a kick in the face of the inviter. So Duryodhan's response was like that. That basically I say, I'll not give enough land to put even the tip of a needle through. So if that had been the age of social media, that could have become a viral Insta reel. Kya dialogue hai? But then, what does it mean? He just wants no reconciliation at all. I think over a period of time, it does become clear. Can there be mistakes in judgment? It's always possible. But now, generally, we shouldn't assume that people are ill-intentioned. But we can't assume at the same time that there are no ill-intentioned people at all. Some people may start with good intentions, and they may somehow their intentions get polluted over time. Or sometimes some people come with ill intentions and they just conceal their ill intentions for a particular amount of time till it becomes evident. So I think with overall a period of with actions, it does become clear. That's what we will be discussing tomorrow to some extent. Okay. You had something?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanad Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, my question is, Sita has the power to see what could happen. In this situation, she couldn't see the what's going to happen, or like what is the Leela here? Why Sita Mataji cannot see what's going to happen? Because even Ram is a supreme Lord. He could see what's going to happen. So how should we read here? Okay. What is the message to us here?
So Nara Leela Kaivalyam, the ultimate reality, descends to this world and performs pastimes as if is a human being or as a finite being. So generally, when the Lord descends to the world, He does not always exhibit His omnipotence. And the same principle applies to His consorts also. So when they are performing Leela, see, every book has a particular purpose. So the Valmiki Ramayan's purpose is to demonstrate the character of ideal human being. And that's why in the Valmiki Ramayana, the divinity of Lord Ram is not emphasized so much. It's definitely mentioned. It's even celebrated at times. But it is not emphasized the way, say, it is emphasized in later retellings of the Ramayana, like, say, Tulsi Ramcharitmanas or other Kamba Ramayana and others, where Ram is seen as an object of devotion. In Valmiki Ramayana, the focus is more on how an ideal human being acts. And everybody faces problems in their life. Everybody faces challenges. Everybody faces adversities. And in good times, everybody can be good. It's very easy to be humble with people who are humble. Isn't it? The real test of humility is when we are interacting with people who don't have humility. So the point I'm making is that it is a person's character, a person's behavior is seen when they are provoked, when they are agitated. So now, if the Lord or his consort for that matter start exhibiting their omnipotence, then they are God. Then there's no problem for them. There's nothing for us to learn because we can't relate with their action. Yeah, because he's God, he does like that. I can't do like that. I'm an ordinary human being. So the Lord, if you see, does not usually exhibit his omnipotence. The Lord acts as if he's a human being. So in many ways, Leela, it means that God subordinates his omnipotence for some other purpose. Now what's that purpose could be? That purpose could be, in this case, exhibiting ideal behavior. Ideal behavior basically in this context means that how to face adversity with dignity, how to stay graceful, how to not become resentful, how to not become revengeful. Now of course beyond that it could also be the reciprocation of love. So that is pure divine love, prema, between the Lord. So basically the Lord does not exhibit his omnipotence all the time. He decides when he wants to exhibit and when he doesn't want to exhibit. In the Damodar Lila, for example, when Krishna is bound, he could exhibit his omnipotence and just easily break the rope or untie the rope. He doesn't do that. But then he exhibits omnipotence and uses the grinding mortar to bring down those giant trees. So it depends on the Lord when he wants to exhibit his omnipotence. Generally, the Lord does not exhibit. So because then that's how, when bad things happen, how do we respond to those bad things? We can learn something from it. We can relate. If somebody is God, then no bad thing can happen to them only. If no bad thing can happen to them, then what is there to learn? Because any bad thing happens, they can just deal with it effortlessly. So the point is that the Lord does not exhibit his omnipotence. Now why? Because he wants to serve some other purpose. He wants to demonstrate some other lesson at that particular point. So how Lord Ram responds, how Sita responds to the adversities that they face, that's the lesson to learn from there. So through those actions, they teach us some lessons. Okay? So thank you very much. Sri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. Yes. So Hare Krishna. So much of what I spoke today is similar to what is there in my latest book, this Living the Ramayana, a small book with about 9 incidents from the Ramayana that are described, and practical life lessons are given from that. And this is a calendar with 365 quotes. Some of you may have the calendar from last time, but this is a different calendar with 365 different quotes. Can you just open it? So each quote is inspired by one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. If any of you would like to have it, it's available. These are different quotes which all show how the Gita's wisdom can be applied in today's world. So hold our plan lightly, hold our Lord tightly. So jealousy makes us very good at counting blessings of others. Those who can't Facebook seek shelter in Facebook. So each of these quotes is inspired by one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Both of these are available in case any of you would like to have. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu doesn't need any introduction. He is very well known as the spiritual scientist. Prabhu is an acclaimed speaker, author, speaker, life coach and monk. He is the member of the ISKCON's intellectual body, the Shastric Advisory Council, Also, he is also the associated editor of the Back to Godhead magazine, which is ISKCON's global magazine. He has been an invited speaker on several international conferences like TEDx, World Peace Conference, and World Peace Congress by UNESCO. He has given talks on multitude of topics at various universities, corporations like even
Prabhu,
here in
that's okay.
Microsoft.
You know, it's like after the movie, when the credits go for too long, it becomes boring.
So, again, I know Prabhu doesn't want his introduction to be very much elaborated, but let's thank Prabhu for conducting this seminar, the 4-part seminar on balancing forgiveness and justice, lessons from Ramayana. And today was the part 1 of it. Tomorrow we have part 2, very interesting topic, seeking justice based on forgiveness. So, very interesting topic. We'll resume tomorrow 7:30 p.m. sharply. So let's thank His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And also Narahari Priya Prabhu has collection of all the books from previous year plus these 2 books. Basically one is the quotes, inspirational 365 quotes for the whole year, and the Living Ramayana book. So both is available on the book table. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
How are you?